Sweet Baby Inc. has been surrounded in controversy over the past few months, and of course they cannot fathom the idea that people will speak with their wallets and not just blindly support the bad content that they're releasing. But now the Sweet Baby Inc. boycott has crushed another new game, Tales of Kenzara ZAU, as the total concurrent players peaked at just 287. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. Now, of course, when there is a game that highlights the fact that they've worked with a narrative consultation company like Gamers X or Sweet Baby Inc., it's bound to get destroyed at this point because gamers are proving that they are willing to speak with their wallets when they are upset. But now we know this new game has been an epic failure. The past few months, Sweet Baby Inc. has faced tons of backlash because of the harassment campaigns their employees have started, the attitudes that their employees have had towards gamers, and the changes that they're making in games. But now the ongoing boycott of video games that have been developed in part by consultancy groups like Sweet Baby Inc. appears to have crushed the sales of Surgeon Studios' Tales of Kenzara ZAU. Now, I will say, when this was initially announced and we saw the first trailers, last year at Summer Games Fest, people were extremely underwhelmed, and right off the bat there were a lot of people saying, I'm not really impressed with this, it's definitely a game that I will not be playing. But now we see that those people didn't show up, and of course the people who do not want to support Sweet Baby Inc. are refusing to touch this game. It says it released on Steam earlier this week, of course, and according to SteamDB, peaked with 287 concurrent players on the day of release, and in the 2 days since, the peak concurrent has already declined to a measly 211 players. Now, of course, we recently saw Suicide Squad kill the Justice League's launch, and that went terribly, and of course that was up to about 13,000 concurrent players at peak, but at the same time, those are really small numbers compared to the other games in the Arkhamverse series. And because this is a brand new IP, I'm sure that there was some hesitation from people on monetarily supporting it, but it doesn't really seem like this game has an audience at all whatsoever. It says not only has the game only achieved a peak of concurrent of 287, but SteamDB also notes that the game has only sold between 930 and 4,700 copies. Now, of course, these are just estimations, and that is a pretty big window. So that is very important to point out. But you know what else is important to point out? Who is behind this game and, of course, this studio. So this is a Grum's tweet. It says the narrative fixes in claims, of course, are being spread on social media that people like Cabrutus and everybody supporting Sweet Baby Inc. detected are, of course, racists because ZAU was made by a Kenyan man who just wanted to promote his culture, and I think that that's great. I think it is perfectly fine if you want to make a product and ultimately promote your culture, but just because the game ends up on a list like Sweet Baby Inc. detected doesn't mean that there are people who are going to, attack your game in a racist way. Cabrutus is not racist for making this list. You worked with Sweet Baby Inc. Your game is going to end up on that list. But the real reason that ZAU actually worked with Sweet Baby Inc., as we've now found out, is because Salim, who co-directed a company, Bibi Sucre, which is Sweet Baby, with the founders of SBI, Kim Belair and David Bedard, the SBI writer Amy Leigh Shaw, and even more. So right there is the evidence that this game, of course, was not just narratively consulted on by Sweet Baby, but they actually helped in the full development process. So that is the reason that they worked with Sweet Baby, and why, of course, so many people are extremely upset over this. But even, the Sweet Baby Inc. information aside, this game, it's getting fairly positive reviews, right? A 7.9 is nothing to, scoff at, but these scores actually were recently much lower, but because there has been an influx of 10s that simply say great game, had lots of fun, which of course definitely come across as maybe bot reviews, this game is not receiving, 10 out of 10s, but it's also not receiving, 2s or 3s for the accumulated score. People are saying things like, it has some small issues in the fire mask, feels bad in movement against the water mask, but it was a solid game with no game-breaking bugs, and only a few bugs that didn't have an impact on the game. I mean, technically all bugs have an impact on the game because they are in the game, but I understand what they're saying, they're not game-breaking. There are a lot of middling reviews here saying, I had the opportunity to play it, and it feels like the game doesn't provide much guidance, leaving you to discover things on your own, and the game starts abruptly, and I was expecting a more detailed background in the initial chapters. The combat is very repetitive, the story is irrelevant, so instead of being immersed in the gameplay like Hollow Knight, for example, we are constantly getting flooded with BS dialogue, and like I mentioned, there are quite a few 10s that have recently been left just saying, hey, it's a good game. I mean, this one, beautiful game, beautiful story, only gripe is the combat could have been tighter, but everything else about the game makes up for that. And then we have the, small issues or great game, lots of fun. And I also think that it's important to point out something a little bit fishy is going on with Metacritic, because while it says that there are over 100 reviews left, they're only showing 10 user reviews, and the game has been out for a few days at this point, so in theory, even if there was a 24-hour window where reviews couldn't be left or they were being tallied, they still all should be here, and they still all should be visible. I mean, with these numbers being so low, there's absolutely no way they could spin this as a positive story. And while we don't have the player numbers for a platform like PlayStation and we only have these Steam numbers, I don't think that they're going to be much higher on PlayStation. I don't think that there's going to be 100,000 people who ended up buying it and playing it and ultimately supporting it. I would wager that the numbers are probably pretty similar to these estimates and, of course, these Steam charts, but either way, this game is getting absolutely crushed right now. Even though I personally didn't have a lot of initial interest in this game, it's just pretty pathetic to see responses like this instead of completely trying to understand why consumers may not want to support it. And of course, Sweet Baby Inc., because the person who founded this studio is extremely biased since he's friends with the Sweet Baby Inc. co-founders and directors and CEO, he decided to instead attack the very people that he would need to buy his game. So it doesn't look like this is going to be a successful game at all whatsoever, because the Sweet Baby Inc. boycott has now crushed its sales and crushed its total concurrent players, which peaked at launch at just a measly 287. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.